If your back is consistently the limiting factor on your deadlifts, it's not because you have bad form or that deadlifts are bad for your back. It's just because you have a weak back. Deadlifts are largely a back movement, so you should be feeling it in your back. And it's actually good if you're feeling it there. The same also goes for squats because you have to hinge forward, and especially low bar squats. Anytime that you're bending forward, your spinal erectors are working to keep you from folding. So that means that your back is going to be working and you're going to feel it there. That's actually a good thing, and it means that you should be doing that exercise more. However, if when you feel this, you're always changing your technique or lowering the weight or thinking that the exercise is bad so you just straight up avoid it, then all you're doing is making your back weaker and making yourself weaker in that movement. This is the same logic as not doing bicep curls because you feel your biceps working and they're sore after. If you avoid a movement, you're going to get weaker at it. And when you avoid working your back, you're just making your back weaker and weaker, and it's going to make it more of a limiting factor. And especially if you're continuing to work your legs, they're going to get stronger and they're going to have a higher capacity, but you're avoiding your back so its capacity is going lower and lower. So when you do go to do deadlifts, your legs have all this capacity to push more weight, but your back is a huge limiting factor and can't keep up. And that's probably why you feel it in your back, not because something's wrong. Also, feeling a movement in your back is not a bad thing. And I understand where you're coming from. I've been there in the past, always trying to keep a flat back, mostly working out my legs, thinking that I'm doing RDLs wrong because I feel it in my back. So I stopped doing them or lower the weight to a point where I could do sets of 25, but still do sets of 8. Yeah, it was bad. I was not pushing myself at all. I'm glad those days are over and that I started actually strengthening my back and pushing my lifts, because I've become way stronger. And don't worry, wherever you're at, it's not too late to start strengthening your back, and I'll help you out with that. I'll list some of my favorite exercises and then pick my top 3 and go over them a little bit more. No longer will your back be a limiting factor on deadlifts, and you'll embrace the feeling of it working and actually come to love it. So starting off with an all-star trio, we have Zercher holds, Zercher squats, and Zercher deadlifts. It's probably no surprise that I love these 3. There's also heavy Jefferson curls, heavy RDLs, heavy good mornings, and heavy single leg or kickstand RDLs. And the emphasis is on heavy here. I don't want you going light with these and being able to pump out 50 reps for a set and only doing 10. I want you to load these to the point where you're getting close to failure or actually failing in the 5 to 8 rep range. If you don't push them hard enough, then your back's not going to get stronger and it's not going to actually force you to use form that uses your back. If you go really light, you can kind of manipulate how your body moves and make it look however you want, and you're not going to get the right stimulus out of it. I listed these exercises because they're very accessible and you only need a barbell to do them. Except for heavy good mornings, they are a little bit better with a safety squat bar, but you could also do them with a Zercher style grip and they're just as effective. If you have the equipment, machine back extensions or 45-degree back extensions are also awesome. You just have to load them heavy enough that you're actually working hard. Now for the added detail like I promised. First, I'm going to go over good mornings. These aren't quite my favorite, but again, they are pretty good. With these, don't try to be overly strict with your form. We're not Mike Israetel here trying to do some team full ROM and keeping very robotic form. We don't really care too much about the stretch on the hamstrings and glutes. We just care about the hinging movement and hinging strength. So you want to slap some plates on there so that it forces you to use your back a little bit more and almost kind of just muscle it up. And when you're using a safety squat bar, the added bonus to this exercise is that you get a little bit of neck extensor work. So this is straight up working your back from the top of your crack to the base of your skull. Is pretty magical. The next goated exercise, which isn't quite the number 1 spot, is the heavy RDL. Again, I like these because they're very accessible and they're very similar to a deadlift, so everyone usually feels pretty comfortable with them. Just like the good mornings, you don't want to be overly strict or robotic with your form. We're just focusing on that hinging movement, and we actually want to get our back involved a little bit. So it's okay to let it round slightly, and it's okay to feel it there, and we want to push this heavy. Slap on those plates, strap up, and then move until you can't anymore. And finally, my number 1 back exercise, which is probably no surprise for watchers of the channel, is the Zercher deadlift. This movement is just unmatched for getting your back through a full range of motion, building up that strength, as well as just building up that grit. This movement really strengthened my back to the point where it allowed me to push my deadlifts heavy and hard more often and make a lot of gains on them. It also really helped me psychologically and toughened me up to just push my training a little bit harder in general, as well as build up a lot of confidence in my body. I now understood that I could do a lot more than I thought I could before. This movement deserves its own tier of ranking. It's just too good. An added bonus movement would be to also just go and pick up some stones. This is pretty much like doing Zerchers, except you have the added bonus of going out into nature and lifting some rocks and having a ton of fun. Or if you train at a strongman gym, it's still a lot of fun, but you don't get the nature aspect. Sadly, I live in a concrete jungle, so I don't have any access to big rocks or stones, but I am looking at ways to incorporate them more into my life. Okay, now you should be ready to turn your back into the strongest part of your body. If you have more questions about the Zercher deadlift, I do have a video going over how to do them and how to progress them. So I suggest watching that. Thank you for watching. Now go out there and make some gains.